Hi, I'm Ruben Morales, Senior Vice President for External Engagement at Wells Fargo. And we at Wells Fargo are so proud to partner with the Latino Coalition in supporting small businesses around the country. Wells Fargo is the #1 bank helping Hispanic families purchase homes, and we're a top bank for SBA loans to small businesses. So we're always looking for opportunities to better serve the Latino community, and especially Latino and Latina-owned small businesses. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you learn a lot. And if you need more information, always feel free to click on wellsfargo.com/biz for more information to help your small business. Thanks.
Hello. Thank you for joining our podcast and webinar series. My name is Carlos Horta. I'm the President and CEO of the Latino Coalition. On behalf of the organization, we're thankful for your support and hope to educate, inspire, and guide all business owners, entrepreneurs, and members of the Latino Coalition with our podcast and webinars. I would like to thank our corporate sponsor, Wells Fargo, for their support in helping to make this series possible. Gracias, Wells Fargo. Today, we're thrilled to present a very informative conversation on artificial intelligence, or AI, as it is commonly referred to or called. For this podcast, we're diving into what AI is all about and how it can give Hispanic businesses a competitive advantage, and some of the risks that go along with that. To help us understand what AI is all about, we have two wonderful leaders in that space with us today. First is Susan Gonzalez. Susan is the founder and CEO of AI&U, a nonprofit she founded in 2019 to educate marginalized communities about artificial intelligence and prepare them for the opportunities and challenges of AI. Susan co-chairs AI Education and Awareness on the National AI Advisory Committee, known as NAIAC, advising President Biden and the administration on national AI initiatives. We also have Doug Kelly, Chief Executive Officer of the American Edge Project, where he leads efforts to sustain America's global technology edge. With a deep background in politics, advocacy, technology, and organization building, Doug brings a wealth of experience to our conversation. Welcome, Susan and Doug. We're thrilled to have you with us today. We're going to get started with Susan. Easy question, right? What is AI and why should it matter to the Latino community?
Thank you, Carlos. Well, first of all, thank you and the Latino Coalition for being at the forefront of this topic. This is unprecedented globally, and we've never encountered anything like the way artificial intelligence is growing, and its impact on our everyday lives, which most of us don't even understand. In fact, on behalf of NIAC, the organization or the committee that I'm on, advising the White House, we did some research to find that in the Latino community, there is roughly, probably less than around a 30% awareness. So that means 3 out of 10 of us are the only ones that sort of understand AI. So this is a critical conversation. So thank you so much for having us today. So the question is, what is AI? I mean, the simple way to think of artificial intelligence is it's essentially the computer mimicking a human brain, if you can imagine. So it really, what AI needs, the food for AI is data. Where does that data come from? Us. Comes from us on our devices. And the reason one of the reasons AI has grown so much and very quickly, I mean, I learned about AI almost 10 years ago when I was at Facebook. So it just didn't start with generative AI. I mean, AI has been around quite some time, but AI requires data and we are the data. So every time we click on any device, we're creating data, which then the technology folks can use to build AI, right? And so we have to remember one important thing to do is to remember that we are the ones that are creating the data. And the reason why it's so big right now is because, well, It's these things, right? So the more we're on it, the more data they're creating, and the more we're feeding AI. So why does it matter? It matters because unlike any other technology ever, we interact with AI every day, all day. Again, think about your devices. So there's really two types of AI. One is predictive, which is what we use when we are interacting with our devices. We are creating a digital footprint. We are training the data. We are creating the data. We are training the AI what we like. So think about the last time you went shopping, right? And maybe you ordered a pair of jeans, and then all of a sudden you're getting ads for similar jeans. Well, because you've just created data that is telling the AI kind of what you like, or even your favorite streaming service. It's no coincidence that it is recommending comedies if you keep watching comedies. So that's predictive AI. And then the other AI you may all have heard of in the last 18 months or so is generative AI. Generative AI is really based on what is called training data. Training data, if you think about it, it's like a set of information, whether it's Wikipedia or libraries or that type of content. So you put in a prompt, and the AI, the generative AI, generates a response. It's called a large language model, and comes back and gives us a response. So really, when we're talking about AI today, it's two types. It's predictive or it's generative AI.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, but you've made it so simple. Yeah, I get it now, and you're absolutely right. Get bombarded with ads once you start looking or viewing for something. Uh, Thank you for that. So Doug, how do people actually get started with AI? I'll share with you, my experience is limited, and it's to GPT chat. That's the only thing that I really know about AI, and I think it's wonderful. I probably don't use most of it, but how do people get started with AI?
Yeah, AI is, I think, the single most powerful technology that the United States has developed in the last 40 to 50 years. And everybody has a stake in this because it's going to help everybody's lives get better, right? Susan, look, she's an expert in this, and she talked about how it helps improve your feeds and how it helps generate content. But for me, when I think about what AI can do and the way people can get started, is it's very simple. You can go to any website, right? You can go to meta.ai, and you can go in there and log in through Facebook, and then you can use the prompts there. It's an easy, almost like Google search, where you can type in any question you want. Hey, can I have a recipe for banana bread? How do I fix the headlight and replace the headlight on my 2017 Dodge Charger, right? How do I do this complicated wiring thing in my house? Or can you give me some tips on learning geometry better? Or how can I solve the specific problem that I'm facing that day? And within 4 to 5 seconds, it will give you an incredibly detailed answer on that. It's not like you're using the web to search types of information and then having to go through different results. This gives you a reasonably accurate answer to your question. And so it can be used for research, it can be used for analysis, it can be used for idea generation, it can be used to help for kids to become smarter in certain topics. And so when I say this is a game changer, it's such a game changer because it's free. There's very few barriers to entry. The only barriers right now are, do you have an internet connection? And because if you have a phone, you can have access to that. And so this is an incredibly powerful technology that is going to transform our country and the world rapidly over the next 5 years.
And Doug, let me follow up on that. You brought up some great examples, and really to clarify also the difference between generative AI and a search. So we've all gone to different types of search engines, and you can ask again, where's the best place to go in Spain? And what we will typically get, or we have in the past, is a long list of articles, and we would have to go look up the information. So think of it, a search goes out into the ocean and brings back all this information that we cull through. But generative AI, essentially, think about farmed fishing, right? The farmed fish are in a net. And in this case, generative AI only goes within a defined space, if you will, to get that information, to provide us the prompts. And so that's the biggest difference. And I think when it comes to small business owners, what's critical for our community right now is curiosity and AI literacy. Our community needs, the 30% I mentioned earlier, that needs to be 90%. 90% of our community needs to understand the basics of what AI is, because get this, if you all don't know about downloading an app on your device to customize your marketing, to manage your inventory, to monitor competition, I can guarantee you the business owner 7 zip codes down is going to know that in short order. And so what I tell our community is, now isn't that time to keep your head in the sand. It can be very scary. It can sound scary. There are definitely, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI, right? And that's what we all need to understand.
Susan, so yeah, with that, lots of opportunity, right? But with opportunity, obviously comes risks.
Mm-hmm.
So can you shed light on what are some of those risks that come with AI that we know so far?
Right. So some may have heard the term algorithmic bias. So what that means is that, well, an algorithm, think of an algorithm as a recipe. So when we walk into a bakery, we see all these great, cupcakes. Well, it took recipes to create those cupcakes. Well, the algorithm is the recipe behind the internet that is instructing the computer what to accomplish. Now, what can happen in this case is that the people that are creating the recipe or writing the code, if you will, to instruct the AI, they may be coming from an unintended place of biases. Because the other issue we're dealing with is that we do not have enough diversity in technology. So for example, let's say you're a small HR firm and you're using AI tools to recruit people or to help your clients recruit people. But if that tool was written to unintendedly dismiss certain people of color or zip codes or what have you, or women, then you're going to get a biased outcome with that tool. And so that is something, what I tell people often is to emphatically to only use tools that come from reputable companies, because you do not want to get biased tools unintendedly. But even then, the top companies are still struggling with unintended biases. And so it's a matter of you understanding what you need to look for and to really do your homework. But now is the time, let's say you are the HR firm or you're a retailer or you're a caterer, hop on the search engine, quite frankly, and like, what are the best tools for my business? I own a catering business, and see what comes up and start looking around.
Got it. That makes sense. Doug, let's talk about, tech competition, right? In particular, China. Would shed some light on that and how it affects us here in the U.S.
Sure. So the U.S. and China are in a neck and neck technology competition for global leadership. For the last 40 to 50 years, America has been in that lead, in that the leadership in innovation. But China's rapidly catching up, right? They have a 3-part plan to pass us. They're investing trillions of dollars in building their own capabilities. They're also, unfortunately, hacking and stealing a lot of our capabilities. And then they also want to make the world more dependent on China's technology. So the challenge with that is that, look, American tech isn't always perfect, right? But underlying that technology of American tech are a set of values that help advance freedom, that help advance democracy, that help advance expression. Whereas China's version of technology is really focused on censoring, control, and surveillance, right? And so it matters which country builds the future overall. And so we want to make sure that lawmakers in this country, when they're thinking about, okay, how do we handle artificial intelligence, that they take a very global view of this, of who are we competing against and what is their agenda. And then when they pass things, they have to look at it and say, okay, does this make us more or less competitive against China and other authoritarian governments who want to become tech leaders overall? So we can't inflict any harm on ourselves when it comes to advancing innovation. And I want to just build on what Susan said in terms of what AI means for Hispanic businesses. There's tens of millions of these businesses in this country, and most of them are understaffed, right? They're 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 people, maybe. And so they're always busy and they're limited by the number of staff they have. If you think about AI as a really gifted and smart intern who will work for free, if you think of it that way, then you can say, hey, develop a marketing plan for my business that can help me sell, additional X, Y, and Z in these 3 markets. Or write a social media post about my latest product. Make sure it's funny, compelling, and witty, and pokes a little bit of fun at my competition. You'll be stunned at the results that you get back so rapidly. And then you can refine it, right? You don't take that piece as the gospel, but you can ask an additional question. So you're funneling it down into this thing that becomes incredibly useful for your business. You can also dump in sales data and say, hey, help me analyze this to see where markets I may be missing, where there's opportunities for my products that matches the customer base in those areas. Because again, AI has taken all of this, basically taken the internet and compressed it down. And it's tapping into that every single time you ask it a question. So like when I said, it's a really smart intern who works for free and works super fast. So take advantage of it.
That's awesome. We can all use an intern like that for sure.
Well, you know what, Carlos, let me jump in really quickly.
Sure.
I think Doug brings up some really good points. And what that comes down to is AI literacy. And where we all need to get as a community is we need to have an understanding of the basics, right? So understanding what is an algorithm, what is generative AI, how do I use AI to find a job? If I'm an educator, what are the pros and cons? If I'm a small business owner, what are the pros and cons? Who are the most reputable AI developers for small businesses? All of those questions, and that will give us a foundation from which to build upon, because we can't expect our community members to embrace, let's say, job upskilling programs because of AI. Well, why would they if there's no understanding? I do some work with the California governor's office, and they were hosting some focus groups. And the question to these focus groups, these workers was, are you concerned that AI is going to impact your job? And the response was, well, I don't know, should I be? So that's a sign of the problem. And so I cannot ask you enough to embrace understanding just the basics. We're not asking anybody to become a machine learning expert here. Yeah. We need, as a community, to understand the basics so we can build upon that, which then ultimately builds up to what Doug was talking about. The more we adopt tools, the better they will get, the better the technology will become, and the more competitive we will be in the long term. But if we stay with our heads in the sand, none of that's going to take place, and our community will absolutely fall behind. I mean, if we think we've seen a digital divide with broadband, this is the AI divide could be so much more significant, again, because we have devices. So really, please just embrace curiosity.
I know you spent a lot of time, you mentioned with the governor's office in California, but you also spent a lot of time here in DC talking to elected officials, policymakers. Share some of how do you educate those folks? Because there's going to be regulation, right? There's going to be laws on this, I would assume.
There will be. The challenge is, and the reality is, we're all just learning, and at the end of the day, policymakers are just people too, right? So I've been having conversations and running sessions for the Latino, Black, and Asian staff members on Capitol Hill to educate them to have the same conversation, because nobody understands it right now as much as we need to, because it is changing so quickly. And the challenge with regulation is it needs to happen right now. There are no guardrails. You take voter misinformation, there are no consequences. There are no laws. There is no regulation. It's a free for all, which is why all these deep fakes you may have heard of, like the fake photos and the fake phone calls and the fake videos. It's the wild, wild west out there. So there's a balance between keeping us competitive with also protecting our Americans, if you will. So I've just been spending a lot of time having these conversations and educating communities, but also joining policymakers in their districts to have these conversations with constituents. So I kind of look at it as like, rubbing two sticks together, trying to create the awareness, trying to create curiosity on AI literacy so we can grow and so our community does not fall behind.
Well, thank you for doing that, because it's not easy work. So we appreciate your efforts with the Latino and the other minority communities, because we're the ones that always seem to get left behind. Doug, as we come to the close of the podcast, just share with the audience your op-ed in earlier this summer in Newsweek titled "Artificial Intelligence is America's Modern Day Moonshot."
Mm-hmm.
What a great
Sure.
title.
Yeah. So, like I'm old enough to grow up during the space race, right? And in the late 50s and early 60s, America was in a very tight global competition for leadership with an authoritarian power, then the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union leapt ahead of us and put the first space artificial satellite into space, the first man into space and circling the globe. And so President Kennedy gave that famous, we're going to go to the moon with a man and return him back safely within the next decade. That man to the moon moment basically created a shared national mission for this country to accelerate innovation so we could change history. And when we were successful in that, that led to where we are now in terms of global superpower. So artificial intelligence can be our modern day moonshot, a shared national mission to accelerate innovation that lifts all communities overall. But our lawmakers got to get it right? If they put too restrictive guardrails on AI, China's going to bypass us and it's going to undermine our ability to innovate. So whatever they're thinking, they got to think really wide in terms of kind of the guardrails on this and what do we want this technology to be and what can it be 3, 5, 10, and 25 years down the road. And I believe that if we get this right, and if people embrace artificial intelligence, and if we beat China in this tech race, we're going to fundamentally be the global leader in innovation and geopolitical strength for the next 5 decades. And that will benefit every single community in our country. But the world's counting on us to get it right, and they're counting on us to lead because the stakes are really high.
No, incredible. Well, time is upon us. Any last words from either of you as we close out?
Yes. Thank you, Carlos, again for having me. And I would like to invite everybody to my organization's website. We create content to give it away. It's in simple English and Spanish, and that's at AIandU.org. AIandU.org. I promise you spend 15 minutes clicking through. We just launched AI in the workforce coming in about 2 weeks. It's AI in small business. So I'll circle back with Carlos and make sure that they put that on their website. But really the goal is to educate each other. And we need to do this to lift each other up and really just understand the basics, and the rest will come.
Great. Thank you. Doug, any last words?
Yeah, sure. People can find more information about our organization at AmericanEdgeProject.org. But I would ask everybody to use one of these AI tools. If you haven't, just do it. And you'll get this aha moment when you use one. Put a very simple request in and then put a more complex one following it. When you see its power and what it can do and what it can generate so quickly for you and how it can benefit your life, you're going to go, holy cow, I got to get in this train and really begin to learn this and do it, because it's game changer for our country.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the Latino Coalition, thank you for joining us today. Once again, thank you to Susan Gonzalez and Doug Kelly for sharing your insights and knowledge on AI. I have no doubt that this conversation has been very helpful to a lot of folks, especially those that don't really know much about AI. You've both made it very simple for us to at least get excited and be curious about it. And that's important for our Latino community. As we close out this podcast, thank you to our corporate sponsor, once again, Wells Fargo, for their support in helping us make this series possible. Please follow the Latino Coalition on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X, formerly Twitter, and visit our website at www.thelatinocoalition.com to learn more about upcoming podcasts, events, and more. Thank you again, and muchas gracias.